Good evening, everybody. My name is Lynx. I am with the Peninsula Astronomical Society. We are a local astronomy club, and among other things, we run the Foothill Observatory, which you can see here, up here in this image and this image, and we run star parties, which you can see over here. This was images from our annual star party in Yosemite, which is quite a sight. I'd recommend it. I am an amateur astronomer as well as astrophotographer. So I spend much of my time with telescopes, not looking through them, but taking photos with them. Over here, you can see some of my work. I'm mostly focused on nebulas and star clusters. Now, today we're going to be focusing on an overview of how these kits work, as well as a lot of useful background knowledge in just astronomy in general. And then we're going to look at assembling one of these kits. The instructions that come with them are quite good, but there's a couple issues that I wanted to address and go over directly. Alrighty, so starting off with the kits themselves, the kits contain a lot of stuff. The library is very generous with what is in these kits. There's a stool, there's a compass, there's a flashlight, there's a lot in them. But the main piece is the telescope and mount itself. And we're going to decode this name, the StarSense Explorer DX100AZ, and work out exactly what that means so you understand the telescope and the equipment you're using. So there's really three main parts to that name. There's the aperture, there's the ability of the telescope to plate solve, and there's the type of mount. And we're going to start with aperture. Now, the 100 in the name refers to the diameter of the front element, which in that case is 100 millimeters. For reference, this is my personal telescope, which is at 92 millimeters. Whenever you see a number in the name of the telescope, it's most likely the diameter of the aperture, as that is one of the most important specifications for a telescope. So in this case, the StarSense 100AZ is a 100 millimeter refractor telescope. There's two main types of telescopes. There's refractors and reflectors. We're not going to worry about that distinction right now. Just know this is a 100 millimeter telescope. Now, the very first part of that name, StarSense, refers to a particular type of plate solving. Now, plate solving is the practice of taking an image and looking at a map of the stars and then comparing it to that image and working out exactly what you're looking at. This is an image I took with my camera of the night sky. This was, I believe this is around July. So we're looking towards the Milky Way core right now. And I know it's somewhat hard to see on this screen. They're really small, but there are circles highlighting particular nebulae and star clusters that are of interest. So from this information in my camera, and in this case, the telescope, could work out exactly where it's pointing in the sky. Jumping back, StarSense is just Celestron's, the company that makes this telescopes, named for that ability. And this is extremely useful. Rather than trying to point the telescope just by eye and just looking through it and be like, oh, is that what I'm supposed to be looking for? You can put your phone on the side of this telescope, it will take a photo, it will check against the map of stars, and it will tell you exactly where the telescope is pointing. This is, I cannot understate this, this is incredibly useful. This is just plate solving, but Celestron calls it StarSense, so that's what's in the name. Now, well, my slides are out of order. We're off to a great start already. Okay, so there's two types of mounts. There's altitude azimuth and equatorial. Now, in this case, we've got an altitude azimuth, which is why it's called AZ. This just means the telescope can point up and down and left and right. There's really nothing to that. It's exactly what you expect. Just points up, down, left, right. Equatorial mounts are a little more complicated. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, but AZ is what we've got here, and it's generally considered to be the best for just looking through a telescope. For what I do with photography, equatorial has some significant advantages. All right, now we're just gonna work through here. Now, all that sounds great, but what can you really see? What can you do with this scope? And that will depend on a lot of things, but safe to say, kind of a lot. This scope is capable of seeing some of the planets in the sky and seeing them quite clearly. These images honestly do not do it justice, as well as seeing some nebulae, and if we get lucky enough to see another comet, like in this photo, comets. The limiting factors are going to mainly be light pollution. We live in pretty light polluted area. There's a scale to cover this, and I'll go over that in a second. but it's quite light polluted here. This isn't a problem for looking at planets, but it's a big problem for looking at star clusters and nebulae. I'd recommend that when you first go out with the scope, you go somewhere fairly dark, and again, I'll focus on that in a moment, and look for the Orion Nebula. That's a fantastic starting place. Now, two little disclaimers here. As you can see, these photos look pretty bad. I'm not super happy with them, but generally with planetary astronomy, and planetary photography, it's much easier to see the planet than it is to take a photo of it. Now, I know it's going to be tempting to hold your phone up to this telescope and take a photo through it, but I'm going to have to ask you not to do that. The lenses of modern smartphones are usually made of much harder and tougher glass than the lenses of the eyepieces that come with this kit, and you can very easily scratch and damage the eyepieces. If you want to know how to take photos with telescopes, that's my exact area, so feel free to ask about that in the Q&A. Now, one more disclaimer here, and this is a really big one. Don't look at the sun. I know that seems kind of obvious, but I really do have to underline this. Don't even take the telescope out during the day with the lens cap off. It is quite dangerous. Just don't look at the sun. If you want to look at the sun, come join our weekly public events at our observatory, Foothill Observatory. Saturdays, it's 10 a.m. to noon, and you can come look at the sun. You'll see it just like this. This is an image I took through our dedicated hydrogen alpha telescope. Now, earlier I mentioned that you should go somewhere darker to use the scope if you can, especially if you want to look at nebulae and star clusters and really anything other than planets. Now, the limiting factor here is how far are you willing to go? And there's a couple places around here that are actually quite good, but if you really want to be able to see properly, you're going to have to drive a little while. So this scale on the side here is called the Bortle scale. This is mostly a shorthand used by astronomers for describing different brightnesses of the sky, and crucially, not the brightnesses of whatever objects are in the sky, but the actual sort of background brightness of the sky. We live, assuming you live in Mountain View, we live in Bortle 7, maybe 6 if you're lucky. This means that you can usually, if you look at the Orion Nebula through this telescope, you'll see a fairly interesting looking smudge. It's worth it. I'd still recommend looking through it, but it's a smudge. Now, if you want to go somewhere a little darker, the regional open space preserves in the Los Altos Hills are a great spot, and they offer after-hours astronomy permits. You've got to sign up for a permit, and 48 hours later, you'll be allowed to use the site, and you'll be able to unlock the gate. This is usually in an area, maybe Bortle 5, maybe Bortle 4, if you're lucky. And this will mean that you can look at the Orion Nebula or some of the nebula like that, and you'll actually see it and go, oh, wow, that's really, really cool. And if you really want to be able to fully use this telescope, you're going to have to drive. You're going to have to drive pretty far. The nearest place that I would recommend for this sort of thing is Pinnacles National Park, which is, well, I would say it's an hour and 40 minutes away, but with traffic, it's more like 3 hours away. And that really is more Bortle 3, and that is a huge difference. You'll look through the telescope at the Orion Nebula and you'll go, oh, wow, that's really, 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 really pretty. And experiences like that are what really make astronomy really, really fun. Now, I'm going to show you guys how to assemble this telescope. Like I said, the instructions are pretty good, but there's a couple things that I take issue with. And I want to just go over those and really make sure we get that down. Alrighty. So the kit webcam there. Yep. The kit comes in this really large black bag. It's not as heavy as it looks. It's honestly pretty portable as telescopes go. Now, like I said, there's a lot in here, and I'm not going to go over everything. There's a full parts list on the Mountain View Public Library website. When you open the bag, you're really greeted with, and I wish I could move my camera a little closer for this. You're really greeted with two main things. You're greeted with the telescope itself, and you're greeted with the tripod. Now, removing the telescope, which is just held down by two cables. Again, I wish I could show that. Moving the telescope. This is it. You're going to want to take this out and set it aside somewhere. Now, most manuals will have you remove the tripod out of a bag like this first. That's generally a pretty good idea. The only reason I'm doing this sort of in reverse is that if you are not super careful with the telescope, you can end up hitting the telescope with the tripod when you're taking it out. And so if you're just doing this for the first time, it's best to take the telescope out first and set it aside somewhere safe. Needless to say, all this stuff is fairly fragile. Then you're going to take the mount out. The mount and tripod is really just this. We'll look at that closely in a second. The next thing you're going to need is, of course, the instructions. And then you're going to need this plate. Finally, you're going to need this gray bag, which contains the mount for your phone that works with StarSense, and these two knobs. These don't really look like knobs, but we'll get to that in a second. Alrighty. There's more in here than we'll need for actually observing, but let's assemble it first. Now, this is the tripod. The legs extend like this. You've got a screw on the side, and the legs slide out. You're going to want to slide these all the way down and tighten them in place. Make sure this is, you don't have to really, really tighten it. Just make sure it's firm. The legs will pretty well stay in place. You're going to straighten them all out. And then I am in a very confined space, so I'm not going to put this all the way down. I'm going to pull the legs back up. But normally, put the legs down, slide it out, and then move on to the next step. But for me, I'm going to do this on a page like you guys can see it. Alrighty. The next step is this weird plate here. Now, this is the first place where the instructions said something that was actually just wrong. So the instructions, the first and only place I should add, these are generally really good instructions. The instructions tell you on step 4 to, I know you don't have these handy, so I'm not expecting you to refer to that. On step 4, to take these bolts here. I think they're technically called wing bolts, because they look like a wing nut, but they're a bolt. Instructions want you to put this nut in down to the top. That doesn't quite work. The threading for the nut is, or threading for the screw, I should say, is built into the top of this plate here. Let's see if I can get that to focus on there. Focus. There we go. The threading is built into these holes themselves, not the legs of the tripod. So with that note, what we can do, well, all of these nuts first. We're going to take all of these nuts. You're going to place the plate on the tripod legs like this. And then you're going to, and this would be on the ground at the time, don't do this pulling it like this. You're going to take these nuts. And again, don't hold it like this when you do it, just do it on the ground. You're going to thread this through a hole here and then into the plate. And I'm just going to do that here. I really wish I could show you what I was doing. Now, once you put all three of the bolts up through the plate, it looks something like this. Now the legs are fixed in place. This is so that you don't accidentally collapse the telescope together when you're using it. Now, this is the most delicate part of the operation. This is when you actually mount the telescope to the tripod. Here, you have this style mount, which is just like a little clamp. There's a screw that tightens against the telescope. This is called a Vixen mount or Vixen plate. So what you do is you take the telescope, and you're going to carefully either slide. The tolerances on this are pretty loose here, so you can really either just slide it in or you can place it against it. And then being very careful not to drop it, tighten the screw down until you're going to want to tighten the screw as far as you can by hand and just leave it there because it's not going to go anywhere, but just make sure it's tight. And now the telescope is mounted to the mount. It's just there, and it's going to stay there. Now this is the part. It's a little bit. This is the part that's a little finicky. So this is the star fence mount. Looks very strange. And honestly, when I first pulled it out of the bag, I wasn't sure which direction it should go. So the way it should go is sort of like this. Again, focus. If your telescope is like this, with the telescope on the far end and this orange circle on the close end, it should be facing sort of 45 degrees up like this. I mean, the exact angle is important, but in line with the telescope. Then you're going to place it against that orange piece and turn it to tighten. Like I said, this is a little finicky. This actually took me like 5 minutes when I was doing it the first time. And then turn it until it clicks into place. Now, I don't know why this one isn't clicking into place right now. Like I said, it's finicky, but I got it to work last time I set this up. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here. But you click this in place. It would make a click sound, and you're good. Now, I'm going to bring this cursor in. Looking closely, you can see this shiny orange like nub here. This is spring-loaded. This is how you release the mechanism once you're done with it. You press this in, and you turn that whole mount, and it comes off. Now for the final step. Well, final as it comes to overall assembly. There's always more steps. So these are the knobs. These are called the fine adjustment knobs. What they're for is, well, finely adjusting the telescope. So on the end here, I'm going to focus in. You can see this little bitty hex screw head. And there's conveniently a hex key for it located right here on the telescope. It's really small, but it's slotted into a little pinhole right here. And there's, come on, there's your hex key. So you want to do, you're going to take this and you're going to pre-loosen these nuts. I'm actually not quite sure what these are called. I know there's an official name, but these are basically screws with no head and just like a screw hole. And you're going to loosen that. Look down the front. And this is not going to focus on, there's no way. But you look down the front and you make sure the screw isn't poking all the way through, so you can slot it on. Repeat the process with the second one. Excellent. Okay, now, I'd recommend doing the top one first. It makes it a little easier to screw in. This is called the altitude knob, because this is altitude and this is azimuth. You're going to put it on, and then tighten it down in place. Even though this is the one part that you have a tool for, it does not need to be that tight. It just needs to be tight enough not to slip when you turn it. But it's not structural. There's no issues with just like leaving it a little loose. In fact, I'd actually recommend that because when taking it apart, it's a little easier. Then the second part. This is the azimuth adjust again. Just slot it in and then screw it down. Now the telescope is ostensibly assembled, but there's still 2 or 3 more steps before you can really try to look through it. So this part right down here is where you put in the eyepieces. Now the eyepieces are kept in a little bag in here. This bag has a couple things in it. I think by default it has a compass and a light, as well as a spare instruction manual, and crucially, the eyepieces. These kits come with 2 eyepieces, one which is sort of more of a wide field and one that is very zoomed in. We've got that here. Now, if any of you guys are into astronomy into photography, this is going to seem counterintuitive, but the eyepiece with the lower millimeter number, get that focused, this one, which is a 10 millimeter, is actually a more like intense zoom or a stronger magnification than the one with the higher millimeter number, which in this case is a 25. Yeah, there, 25 millimeter. Counterintuitive. It took me a while to get used to it too, because I come from photography. So what you want to do is you want to remove the caps off the front of these. There's a clear cap that goes on the front and a little black cap that goes on the back. You're going to want to pull those off. Then this cap here comes right off, and you want to slot this in. There's no problem with it going too deep. There's no issue with it like being like in the wrong spot. Just make sure it's all the way in until it stops moving. Then tighten it with this little screw on the side here. Right. Now, the way you focus this, which you're going to need to do once you eventually find a star to look at, is by turning this knob here. It's on the same, it's the same on both sides. It moves that whole piece up and or forward and backward, up and down, something like that at this point, to get the telescope into focus. Now, with bigger telescopes, it's often somewhat a challenge to focus. With this one, it's actually pretty easy. Just like sort of pan around in the sky until you see a star, and then move the focus knob until the star gets sharp. And if it sounds like that's a sort of vague instruction, it is, but once you actually get out there and you're looking through it, you'll know when it's sharp. It's just going to immediately sort of like turn from like a blob, which seems to have like a weird reflection in it because there's a little mirror in here, into a sharp pinprick, and then you know it's in focus. Now, this wide eyepiece is what you're going to want to use for nebulas and star clusters and galaxies, and that's it's a very wide field of view. I'd also recommend it for when you're looking for your target. Now, if you're using this whole star sense thing, it should be pretty easy to find a target, but getting that final adjustment is pretty useful with a larger eyepiece. Speaking of finding your target, there's this. This is called the finder scope. And the telescope over so you can see it a little better. This is basically just a little scope on the side, which is co-witnessed or aligned with the rest of the telescope. Now, there's instructions in the little instruction manual on how to get it perfectly aligned with the rest of the telescope. Because this is already pre-installed in the kit, it was pretty much perfect out of the box. But if it seems off, you can align it with the instructions in the kit. Those are really good instructions. This is useful just to like find the small dot in the sky that you're looking for. Now, for planetary, when you're looking at Jupiter or Saturn, I'd recommend Jupiter. It's high in the sky right now. It's really pretty. Once you find it in this eyepiece, you're going to want to change over to the smaller eyepiece, the 10 millimeter. And this will give you quite a good view. Under fairly clear skies, which are really rare right now, you should be able to see Jupiter as a little circle with a bit of texture to it, and a couple bright dots around it that are its moons. And that will appear pretty good through this scope. You'll be able to see pretty clearly. Now, the software side of things is not something I'm particularly qualified to review here. But in this electron guidebook and in the app it's going to ask you to download, the way to do star sense, which is that sort of plate solving I mentioned earlier, is pretty clear and pretty intuitive. And I think it's a really good system. Now, otherwise, I can't think of what else to show necessarily with assembly for this kit. So I'm more than happy to move into questions. I know I speak rather quickly, and I just want to make sure we get those all answered.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Lynx, for that really informative presentation and for showing them how to assemble the kits. Yeah, so if any of you in the audience here have any questions about how to utilize the kits, further questions about good areas and things to look out for when using the telescope, Lynx could certainly answer those. And then also I'm happy to answer any questions regarding how to place holds on the item or anything regarding picking them up at the library. So yeah, if anyone has any questions at this time, feel free to use the Q&A or the chat. I'll just give you a few minutes here. Okay, yeah, let's see. So question from Divya. where do you attach your phone to the telescope to be able to use the star sense?
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I kind of skipped over that here. So the part I was struggling to attach earlier is where you attach it. This piece here, which mounts onto the side of the telescope. Turn this around. So it mounts on like this, and then you can clamp your phone to the mechanism here. Let me just let me grab a phone. Hold on. You'll take your phone and you'll sort of slot it in. This is spring loaded, and it'll lock into place like that. You're going to have to align your phone with. I'm not going to remove this right now. There's a cap covering it, but you're going to have to align your phone to a hole in this side of the piece using these little knobs on the back here. Once you get that into place, you'll the Stargazing that has instructions for this. It will show you the view through here. There's a little mirror in here and a little hole at the top, and it sees through there. Does that answer your question?
Great, thank you. Let's see, and I saw a question come in from Ali, which I can answer is how long is the rental period? So it's a 2-week checkout, and you can reserve them ahead of time. Right now, we only have 2 kits that are in circulation, so we have quite a long holds list. But the good news is that in a few weeks, we'll be adding another kit there, the one that Lynx was so kind to demo to us tonight. Once we get that back at the library and do some more processing, we will be adding that. So hopefully that will make the holds list diminish a little bit. I would encourage those of you who do get a chance to check one of these out that try to be mindful of the fact that they are in high demand. So, if you're able to get them and then, do what you need to do within that 2-week period. If you can return them early, that's always appreciated, but you do get the full 2 weeks to utilize them. Let's see, got some other questions that came in here. Question from Minjung Kim. Are there any gotchas for teardown? When you were kind of tearing down, putting things away, did you come across anything that was kind of complicated?
That's an excellent question. And the thing that I guess there's really two things that came across that are sort of complicated. And that was, again, this mount. I think it's mostly like a sort of a me issue, not being able to get this in place and out of place. But this mount is really finicky to get on and off. The gotcha I got when disassembling it with it was, so again, there's this little orange spot here, which clicks into place. Let me see if I can get, it's really hard to see. This hole here. And pressing that into position to get it unlocked was pretty difficult. I might just not have very strong hands, honestly. So that's the first one. The second one was when you're taking these off, especially this one, getting this little tool into the right spot is kind of difficult. It can just be at like a weird angle and it's difficult to get to the right spot. But if you run across that, just keep turning the knob until the screw is in an easy to access location. That's what I recommend. Otherwise, this assembly was pretty straightforward. And just again, a reminder: be gentle with everything. Optics are always very fragile. Well, okay, not always, I guess, but very often very fragile.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there are a lot of parts within that kit, so yeah, try to handle them gingerly if you can. Let's see. We had another good question come in. If we run into questions after getting the telescope, is there support? How do we best ask for help? What I would recommend doing is if you check out a telescope and you do run into any issues, you can either come to the library and ask us at the second floor desk, or you can also just use the contact us feature on our website. Actually, that's probably the most convenient thing to do would be to just use the contact us feature on our website, and then that would get forwarded to our librarians within the customer experience and technology division, and then we can answer your questions. And if we were to run into any issues, we would check with the company who made the telescope, or I might even ask Lynx here if he has any help for that. But certainly, if you run into any questions, just contact the library, and we'll do our utmost to address any issues you're having. Let's see, another good question here. How do we get on the waiting list? So I put a link in the chat. I will do it again here since we have some more questions that came in. So from this link here that I just put in the chat, If you click that, that'll take you to the Explore the Outdoors page. And then if you just scroll down, you'll see information about the stargazing kits. And then you can just click the hyperlink where it says stargazing kits, and then that will take you to the page where you can place a hold. As I said, right now we only have the 2 kits in circulation, so I think there's over 100 reservations on the kit, but we will be adding more kits, and so that will help kind of ease the registration or the hold. So hopefully you'll be able to get your hands on one sooner than later. Let's see, got some other good questions. Another question about this disassembly. Um, they're asking, should the hex key screws on the adjustment knobs be retightened before storing the scope? I noticed you had to unscrew them before assembling.
That's a really good question. Uh, they should be loose enough that they're gonna like fall off, but it's not necessary to put them all the way back in. I just did sort of out of habit. My telescope has a similar mechanism that's somewhat finicky, so I always have to put them all the way back in. But this one's pretty forgiving. You can leave them most of the way out.
Great. And let's see, looks like we got received a few good questions here. This
We've got
might
quite a
be a
few
little
questions in the
bit
chat.
further than you typically have links, but someone's asking, are there any places in Sonoma you might recommend for stargazing?
Ooh, actually, maybe yeah. I need to figure out another name. Hold on, because I was recently down that way.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a beautiful
Was
area.
yeah. Let me see. I'm waiting for Google Maps to load so I can see if I can remember that spot.
Oh, no problem. And then there's another question. I know you had mentioned that kind of within the immediate area of Mountain View, probably not ideal to get a really good view on the telescope. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say so. And well, okay, I would say that's very true for anything other than planets. Planets are quite bright and quite, I don't know how to put this other than quite dense, so they aren't affected too much by light pollution. Okay, near Sonoma, I believe where I was up near Berryessa Lake, which I know is a fair drive from there. But I think there's also, now this isn't from personal experience, but I believe there's a like a small hill, sorry, a small mountain or hill called Maggie's Peak, and I've heard that there are some people who like to go run there.
Great. All right.
And
So for folks in Sonoma, those are some good places to check out. And then, yeah, someone did ask, what areas are what are some good areas to view that are not too far from Mountain View? So is there any, other than, I know you mentioned that national park that was about an hour and 40 minutes away. Is there anything a bit closer where people can still kind of see some more of the star clusters and other things beyond the planets?
absolutely. So one other spot that I briefly mentioned in my presentation was specifically Montebello Open Space Preserve. But there are quite a few open space preserves in the hills behind, like in the Los Altos Hills. Some of them are in Los Altos, some of them are technically in Palo Alto. I'm not quite sure where, but you can get astronomy permits for those open space preserves. You can reserve them online. I'm not going to share the exact link because I don't remember it off the top of my head, but Mid Peninsula Open Space, I believe it's the typically people that run that, and you can request a permit and they'll leave a gate unlocked for you and you'll be able to stay there for quite a while. And it's a pretty good view, quite a bit darker than around here.
Fantastic. And then someone had a question about the astronomy club that you're a part of. Said, what club is that? Can anyone join the club? Is prior experience necessary?
Prior experience is not necessary. Anybody can join the club. Let me just make sure I have the link to my own club. I don't know, it's probably. Okay, so we are the Peninsula Astronomical Society, or PASS. And do you mind if I post the link to chat?
Oh, please go ahead.
All righty, just so there's no confusion. This is our website, and anybody can join. We charge, I think, $25 a year still, which honestly is very worth it. You get access to, you can be trained on our little observatory at Foothill and on one of our observatories in the Santa Cruz Hills. Sorry, Santa Cruz Mountains, both of which have some pretty useful scopes. And you can also rent out scopes and get access to star parties. It's a pretty good bargain. I still think we should raise our prices.
All right, and let's see. It said we did not see the link. I think maybe I think you're was only to hosts and panelists.
That would
So
do it.
let me copy that, and there you go. That went out to everyone. So yeah, feel free to check out that link if you're interested in learning more about the Peninsula Astronomical Society. There's a good question here about how can we check the number in line for pickup dates? So on that page that I linked to earlier, if you click on where it says Stargazing kits, that's where you can place holds. You can see the 2 copies that are checked out. You can see when those are due. And you wouldn't necessarily be able to see what date it would be available for pickup for you, because that's going to depend on how far you are on the list. I'm seeing right here we have 125 people on the wait list for our 2 stargazing kits. So it's hard to anticipate whether people are going to check them out for the full 2-week loan period, or some people might just use it for a day and bring it back sooner. You can always see when they're due back, the ones that are currently checked out. So hopefully that can give you a little bit of a frame of reference for how long it would take. But as I mentioned earlier, we will be adding an additional kit to our circulation. So hopefully that will kind of ease the registration list a bit, so it won't be so high for the holds. Let's see, let's get some other good questions in here about let's see. Yeah, I had a question here asking, can you recommend any good book for a beginner in backyard astronomy,
So
or any
I
websites if you or other resources as well?
well then in that case, so I can recommend some websites. I'm a product of my times, and I'm also very stubborn. So my general policy is that I just kept trying something until I figured it out, which is not necessarily what I recommend. But Cloudy Nights, I don't know if it's .com or .org, but it'll come up when you search it. Cloudy Nights is an excellent resource for both beginners, intermediates, and advanced. It's really a good spot. Um, I don't have any for particular backyard astronomy, but I know somebody who wrote a really good book, and it's really embarrassing that I cannot remember the name of it. But yeah, I don't have any other particular book in mind.
No worries. Yeah, and you can always come to the library or check out our catalog, and I'm sure we can find you some relevant titles that would be helpful for beginning astronomers here. Um, let's see. We had another good question from Diana. Would you recommend assembling on site? It seems like it might be easier to assemble where there's light. So would you recommend assembling ahead of time, or once you get out to the field?
So I'd recommend assembling once you get out of the field. This is something that really strikes home for me. Assembling and breaking down the telescope every time I take it is quite an ordeal, but it is well worth it. Trying to move the telescope when it's assembled is both can be very cumbersome and also somewhat dangerous for the telescope, just because it's a lot. Honestly, if it's assembled like this, it's kind of difficult to get it through doorways without banging against the side. So don't do that. There is a flashlight in the kit, and I'd recommend setting it up with that. Once you, I'd also recommend setting it up once, like at your house before you go out there. It's good to have that little bit of muscle memory.
Excellent. All right. Well, if there are any last questions here, we have a couple minutes. So I'll give you a moment here if anyone has any other last minute questions. But I just want to thank everyone for coming out. And yeah, if you ever run into any problems with these kits in the future, just feel free to reach out to the library via the contact us link on our website, or stop by any of our service desks, and we'll try to straighten out any issues you have. Um, all right. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I'll go ahead and let you go, Lynx. I thank you so much for taking the time to offer that presentation and offering recommendations on how to utilize the kits, and also just assembling it in real time. Those are very, very helpful. So thank you for your time.
I'm very glad to. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys all have an amazing night.